Hello, welcome. I'm Michelle Swan Young. We're in a series of talking about the reasons why it's so important for parents to cultivate a sense of calm or coming back to calm and connecting back with themselves, especially in relation to their kids. And today I want to talk about how we as parents model for our kids how to be a person in the world, and especially how to be an adult in the world. So our kids see as normal their lived experience as they're growing up. The people who are very closest to them, which would be us as their caregivers, other people that they have very close relationships with and spend a lot of time with, those people are going to help them understand what it means to just be a human being in this world. And as I have reflected back on my life, I have noticed that there are times when I did not even realize that I was in a certain state for a period of time until much later. So a friend and I were reflecting back on maybe 10 or 15 years ago in our lives when our kids were really young and just how we experienced life at that point. And we both were talking about how in our bodies and minds and our relationships, how we felt so much more constricted or tight, more anxious, if you will, less settled, more constricted. And we at the time had no idea that that's actually how we were experiencing life because we had never had a different experience of it. And we didn't recognize a different experience of it in anyone else who was really close to us. We hadn't seen it modeled in other people. But as we did our inner work and as we learned and grew as parents, and fast forward to now, we can look back and see how much different our lives are now and how much more settled and how much more free and open we feel now in our lives than we did back then. But back then we had no idea that the way that we feel now was even a possibility. And that is going to be necessarily true for our kids as well. As they're growing up, they're seeing how we live and how the closest people to them live. And that model for them shows them what it means to be a person in this world. And if they are able to see us prioritize some different things, then they're going to get such a head start knowing and seeing and like absorbing in their very core the things that are really important for them to thrive as a human being. So for example, when we are able to model growth and learning and change, then our kids are able to see that it's okay to discover that you've made a mistake and to change, to do something different. They're going to discover, or they're going to absorb from us, because they're going to see it modeled from us, that it's a really crucial part of life, actually, to acknowledge mistakes and reflect back on how we did something and see how we could do it better and then shift to that. When we are able to model being emotionally intelligent and having skills with our emotions, that helps our kids to be able to have those skills as well. So when we can show them that big emotions are not something, first, that are permanent, and they're also not something to be afraid of, especially big unpleasant emotions, when we can model allowing ourselves to feel that way and processing them and even learning how to do that, when we model that for our kids, then our kids begin to see that they don't have to be afraid of really big emotions. They don't have to be afraid that those emotions are going to last forever, for the rest of their lives. They don't have to be worried about how to handle them because they will have seen that there is a skillful way to handle it from us. And of course, they are kids and they are in the learning process, so they're not going to display all these skills right away, but they will absorb from us at least the possibility that the skills exist. Whereas, like I was reflecting with my friend, I didn't even know that some of these things existed much earlier in my life. And neither did she. So another thing that we can model for our kids that will help them to become thriving adults is caring well for ourselves, prioritizing that self-care. And that goes along with having boundaries. So oftentimes, especially for mothers in this particular society and culture that we're in, the stereotype or the unwritten expectation is that we just give and give and give and give and give, and that we have no boundaries to our energy, our time, our enthusiasm. But what happens, because that's not actually true, what happens is that we end up burning out. But when our kids actually see us say no when we need to prioritize our self-care, and when they see us taking time for ourselves so that we can fill ourselves back up, whether that's through nourishing our bodies, whether that's through movement, whether that's through things that we just love to do, whether that's through relationships, nurturing relationships in our lives. There's so many different ways that we can take care of ourselves. When our kids see us do this, they learn that they don't have to do the stereotype. They don't have to exist in the world, especially if they become mothers, as people who just give and give and give until they're completely exhausted and depleted. They learn that it's important to take care of themselves because they see us doing it. With boundaries, when our kids watch us set boundaries and hold loving and kind boundaries and state them in ways that are respectful, then they learn that that's what a healthy adult does. That's what it means to be an adult. And so they, like I said, they're not going to immediately know exactly how to do them themselves, do all these things themselves right away. But as they grow and mature, they will know that that is a possibility. They will still have to develop those skills, but they will have seen us use them. And all of these types of modeling are not about teaching our kids something that they could recite as a fact, or even them cognitively being able to say, I need to take care of myself, or any of those things. You know, I need to calm down, or I can calm down. I mean, they may or may not be able to speak those words. This is not about like teaching concepts. It's actually about a much more fundamental way of teaching. That modeling is something that they absorb on a more fundamental whole person level. So their bodies, their minds, their relational energy, their emotions, all of that is absorbing the modeling that we're doing for them. So if during listening to this you have suddenly become aware that maybe what you're modeling is not what you would love to teach your kids, I also want to say that this is absolutely not a reason to despair, because I believe that the most important modeling that we can do is the modeling of growth. So the modeling of recognizing our mistakes and then changing our behavior, even if it's super tiny and it takes a long time, but changing how we exist in the world and what we do to become a better version of ourselves, a better person and a more whole person. And so if you discover ways that maybe you're feeling like you're not modeling well, then I encourage you to really pause and think about just maybe one thing that you could do that would start to help you shift. And one way that you can also model for your kids this shift is to narrate it or talk about it with them. So certainly they will experience if you do some shifting yourself. But if you have a relationship with your kids where you can say that, and it also age appropriate, but if you can talk about how you realized that there was something that you were doing that needed to change, and then what you're doing to change it, and then if you have ups and downs along the way, Maybe even verbalizing that to them and sort of narrating like, oh, today I noticed I didn't do the thing that I really had wanted to do. And so this is how I'm going to keep working on that particular aspect. I also just want to encourage you that relationship repair with your kids or with yourself can happen at any time. It's never too late. Even just opening the door to it, opening the door to change in yourself in the way that you model, that's a really big deal. None of us are perfect. We're not perfect as parents. We're not perfect as people. And perfection is unrealistic anyway. We are all doing the very best that we can with what we have. I think it's really important to acknowledge that, to give ourselves kindness, to accept ourselves and our imperfections, because that's also another way that we can model for our kids that they can do the same. And I just want to encourage you that these small shifts that you can make, and even just reflecting on how you're modeling for your kids, how to exist in the world as an adult eventually, that those can be really powerful. So I encourage you to take a few moments to just look over how you show up in your life and how your kids are seeing what you're doing, and whether or not you're showing them what it means to take care of yourself, to set boundaries, to process your emotions instead of pushing them away, to be open to growth and learning and change, and acknowledging when you've made a mistake and making a repair. So if you discover that maybe you want to focus on any of those things a little bit more and you need a little more support, I do have several ways that I support parents in coming back to that calm and connection to themselves. You can find links in the description of this video below. I do offer some one-on-one help as well, if that's something that would be helpful for you. But I also just want to say that you can absolutely do this work on your own, and also with the community that you already have and in your own family. So modeling is such an important thing that we do for our kids, and being able to model coming back to that calm and connection with ourselves is so crucial, so that our kids can learn the skills to do the same. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you like this video, please press like, it helps me out. Subscribe to get notifications when I release a new video every Wednesday. I hope you have a really wonderful day, and take good care.